Hi, everyone. Welcome to this podcast. Today, I'm joined by Luke, who's a senior consultant with MethodGrid. And the scope of this talk is really for us to talk about what we call the UK Project Delivery Playbook. Each year at MethodGrid, we do one sort of industry research project. So things we've done in the past is obviously we've got PACE Digital, which is available to everyone in the rail sector. We recently launched the Praxis Playbook, which kind of digitalizes praxis into a digital playbook. And for this year, I suppose it's kind of a shared, Luke, you kind of came up with a concept, but we want to build what we call UK Project Delivery Playbook. And we're going to talk about it in a bit more detail and the kind of scope in this session, so you're kind of aware of it. But it's basically a playbook that takes the UK government project delivery standard, all of the different resources, route maps, capability assessment, take the Green Book, the sourcing playbook. So all of the kind of UK government standards that you have to kind of follow or align your capability to deliver, but try and see if we can help and build that as a kind of industry available playbook that would help UK organizations, UK government organizations or UK government departments being able to translate all of the standards into a kind of effective way of working that they can tailor and right size for the projects they deliver. I think that's the broad scope of it. I think, Luke, you kind of mentioned this, is sometimes we pick industry research projects, we disappear, and then about 6 months later we come back and go, it's available. So I think for this one, because it kind of involves so many kind of different organizations, so many different parties and kind of different stakeholders, we just thought we would do a session each month and just share our kind of thoughts, invite people to come and talk about it, but obviously show people how we kind of progress through the build and the development of the playbook. And then, I suppose, the more input and the more people that are involved, we think the kind of better the outcome of the actual end product will be. So I think this is the first podcast of the series. We might do a few live events as well, just to kind of encourage people to ask us questions. So we'll do that in the future. And we may do we do a few podcasts, and we've got a couple of places in London, one in Oxford, near Oxford Street, and one in London Bridge. So we might have a few guest speakers talk about some of the challenges that they're facing and how potentially what this playbook could do for it. So I think that's, if you're interested in kind of building like project delivery approaches, you work for kind of UK government organization or department, or you have to kind of comply with the functional standards, then this is probably what this series of talks is going to be about. So please, follow us, and if you want to talk to us and engage with us, please, follow us on LinkedIn. Okay. Right. So look, I suppose we should probably talk about what is the scope of the UK Project Delivery Playbook, and probably what's the problem that we're going to try and solve. So we tried to draw this quite simple diagram, I think, to help understand it. So there are a various set of like functional standards and kind of guidance resources that were produced by the IPA, but I think it's now Nesta, and they kind of define like what's the functional standard that all UK government departments or organisations need to meet. And so that's that kind of top box, that kind of one set of functional standard that kind of is hoping, well, its aim is then to improve the capability across the government. But then obviously each individual department or UK government organisation has to then like translate that standard into a kind of a process, a way of working, make sure the kind of governance and controls are put in place, pick the tool sets and technology that they want to choose and use to do it, operationalize it, I suppose, with kind of the templates. And then in some cases, obviously, it's not about the kind of generic project management capability training, like, and certifications that people are going to, but there'll be certain training that you kind of, well, look, this is how we deliver projects in our organization to department, which is very much bespoke and local to, what's the department's business model or way of operating, that kind of, whilst we're compliant with standards, we've had to translate that to be pragmatic in how we deliver. And I think, the other aspect of it is, I think the standard also gives you the capability assessment kind of tool. I think that, it's good that they've set the standard, which is, look, they want the minimum expectation on all departments and organizations is that, you meet the good, you meet good. I think there's various cases where I'd probably say most are kind of in the developing space. But I think for us, when we think about it, I think that's the pressure that most departments and organizations like UK, they're working out how they translate it into something that's pragmatic, that people and teams can follow. But then they also have to ensure that, okay, yes, are we meeting the kind of minimum set standard in terms of that capability? And I think there's another pressure, which is, I'd say a lot of them are kind of subject to audit, of being audited and being assessed. And, there's areas, probably non-conformance and non-compliance in terms of all the evidence that's required to demonstrate that they are meeting the standards. So, I think if you're like head of capability, head of profession within any of those departments and functions, I think you're always kind of balancing, these are what the standards say, here's how our ways of working are doing, and then there's this kind of drift or gap that we're constantly managing, and then being able to respond and make sure that we're kind of improving kind of compliance and quality to kind of meet that standard. So it's quite, I wouldn't say it's an easy challenge, and I'm sure it's quite challenging, but I think that's the frame of what we want this playbook to be able to kind of help solve. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly where we want the playbook to be, as a one-stop shop, essentially, to help you deliver aligned with that, those policy standards and tools that sit at that top level. It's probably worth saying as well that kind of part of what we want to do at MetaGrid is our overarching aims is help solve some of the common pain points that people have, and often those guidelines are there to help solve those things. And so providing that in a playbook opportunity for people to help in their delivery will help solve some of those pain points, such as inconsistent delivery, not being able to get the oversight that you'd necessarily want in that project delivery, not the best project control, and help people also onboard quickly into those standards and guidelines because you've got them available to you there.
I think it's we'll come on to probably in the conversation, but I think it's definitely, whilst the playbook will help kind of with the process ways of working, I think there are other aspects of the playbook hopefully will support in terms of, well, actually building the capability and confidence in people in order to execute and follow that process. So I'll move on. I think when we kind of intersect that or introduce that kind of UK Project Delivery Playbook, I think what we're trying to say is it's going to try and obviously translate all of the functional standards into ways of working. I think we've got to hold ourselves accountable as part of the project to make sure we're quite clear. If we build this playbook correctly, and translate it properly, I think people would probably ask us the question is, where do you think it would get me in terms of like the assessment framework? Will it get me to be good, or will it get me to be kind of better or best? I think the reality of the kind of that isn't, it won't meet all of the requirements, but what we need to be transparent about is, well, look, out of all of the requirements set out in the capability assessment, the playbook should get you to here and here, but it doesn't address these points. That some of them are kind of, well, that's more about how you run the business and do certain things that are related to how you meet that requirement. But certainly I think we should give people transparency, and probably one of the deliverables of the project would be, look, if you were to take this, tailor it and right size it, we know that we'll you'll be able to demonstrate and evidence these requirements within the capability framework. So you kind of know where you are, and then you can work out how you prioritize what you need to do in order to meet some of the other requirements that aren't specifically like ways of working process related. But I think as well, that playbook that we build, I think it's a starter for 10, I'd say. It gives you at least, and we'll try and work out what the percentage is as we go through the build, but look, it's 70% maybe of what you need to demonstrate, like, to meet the guidance and the standard. But there's 30% where you're going to have to translate it and make it, well, look, there are certain deliverables or ways of working that are unique to your organization or unique to your department that kind of make it pragmatic, like practical in how you actually want the teams to execute and deliver projects. So there's the kind of tailoring and customization that I think is going to be needed. I think I'm quite conscious that, and I think this is why it's such a good industry research project, is it's the level of reuse. Like I've got no intent of trying to do this. I don't know how many departments or UK government organisations there are, but if I have to build this playbook, I don't know, 50 times, I'm like, that's an incredible an incredible waste of UK taxpayers' money. So I think it is for us to kind of think of it's a reusable asset that hopefully kind of reduces the barriers of entry to be able to take it, and then all you really need to do is tailor it, rather than we've got to kind of build this UK project delivery playbook 50 times. It would be, look, we've built it as a reusable master template that all departments and organizations can benefit from, and really all that's needed is the sessions required to kind of work out how you tailor it and right size it to meet your specific requirements. So I think that's probably where I think it would be valuable, but also I think that's where the project, it kind of meets the criteria for us as an industry research project. It benefits the project profession. We definitely can see that it's going to be like reusable, and I think it's hopefully a good investment, in sort of UK taxpayers' money by making it cheaper and easier just to focus on tailoring and right sizing.
Yeah, and I think that part of that tailoring and right sizing process, we'll probably figure this out in the build, but trying to find areas that we think are most likely to be the things that you will have to tailor and right size and kind of call those out. So it's a much easier job when you receive the playbook to say, okay, this is the kind of flagged area that probably needs a little extra thought to make sure that it's more appropriate for our processes within our own department, etc.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think guidance on how it can be tailored and right sized, I think would be useful. Some of that will be triggered by the standards. So, there might be different flavors of the playbook that, if you're high risk, medium risk, low risk, how quickly can you tailor the playbook based on risk classification? And as we get into it, there's probably maybe different flavors of the playbook, one for construction, one for digital, one for maybe agile. There'll be a whole different set of flavors, but we won't get into all of it. But I think it's understanding that it's not just there's one way of working. We'll need this playbook to be kind of adaptive and tailored to meet the needs of different like types of portfolios, or types of programs and projects.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think as well, so this slide here, when we've built a number of different playbooks for quite a few large like infrastructure organizations, I don't think it won't just be that the playbook needs to be compliant with GO as a Gov S002. I think it's naturally, when we think about projects, there'll be other key standard or functional standards or like guidance put out by the government that will need to feed into what would be a project delivery playbook. Because I don't want to build a project management playbook. For us, when we build playbooks, it's about project delivery. And so I think there'll be things that we have to add into it, which will be, look, we'll have to make sure that the Green Book requirements are added. I'd say virtually the majority of government projects will involve some form of sourcing and procurement. They might not, there might be some internal ones, but I think the majority will involve procurement and sourcing. So I think we'll have to look at like that procurement lens through the project lifecycle and make sure that we feed in the sourcing playbook. And I think then there's like underneath the delivery model guidance, like depending on what type of project you're executing, you'll have the construction playbook, there's the digital and technology playbook. So there'll be specific model guidance that we need to feed in to allow us to kind of right size the playbooks for different use cases and applications. So I think that's the kind of broad scope, I think, of what would be covered in the UK Project Delivery Playbook. And I think, thanks for doing this one, Luke. I think when we, obviously, most playbooks we build are built using AI and against a kind of source grounded library. And obviously you can see there's quite a few artifacts, PDFs and information that you kind of need to review and assess in order to be able to build like the UK Project Delivery Playbook. But I think, this kind of caused to the same, like probably one of the challenges that people are feeling, like if you're a head of profession or you're responsible for the kind of capability, there's a lot of things you need to read and then work out how you translate that into your way of working. So we called out the key ones, but definitely, obviously there'll be Gov 002, there'll be the gate review process. Like when we build the gates in the playbook, we'll need to make sure that it's aligned with the kind of project assurance framework. There's then the project route map and the supporting modules. I can't remember how many there are, but maybe there's like 7 or 8 independent modules that we'll have to kind of review and assess. There's the teal book. There's a whole set of different resources that we're going to have to kind of align with to make sure that, okay, the playbook meets or satisfies the guidance, delivers the evidence, or, meets the shall requirements that are set out in the different standards. I mean, I think this is why I think it's, highly reusable. We want to say that, you don't have to do that individually. We've gone through that and done it once. And maybe, once we've got the playbook built and ready for kind of testing and piloting, maybe it's kind of, we also get it independently assured by Nesta and the team to say, look, actually, yes, no, that gets the rubber stamp, and it would, we can see the evidence about how it meets all the requirements, and we can, we're happy with, if you followed the playbook or tailored it, it would definitely, we can see how you get to the kind of good rating in the capability assessment. But I think that's probably the next thing for us, is to start building the source library in the platform to start allowing us to then start generating and building the playbook.
Yeah, and it's about making that delivery just easier for people to kind of dive in and be able to follow those processes that are outlined in all of these different standards.
Yeah, I think that's it. You called out some of the challenges. I think, there's a cognitive load challenge. You're asking people to deliver projects. I wouldn't say they've got the time to go in and oh, right, I'm at gate 1 or I'm gate 2, or I'm looking at the project route map and I'm looking at the organization operating kind of module. Like, you don't have time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a lot to read. So I think it is then how we make the playbook translate that, so that you can always link and access back to that PDF or that source of information, but the playbook, has taken the core elements of how you do it and provides the guidance to the teams, that's relevant to the project lifecycle. So it's kind of, they know where they are. I'm at this stage. This is what I need to do. This is how I do it. But it's basically, articulated in the left to right kind of flow of the project lifecycle, not in the kind of, okay, I'm looking at the site, I'm working out which resource I need to look at, where am I, and trying to find the right source. That takes them too long, and I think that's would probably lower like compliance and adoption to ways of working. So I think we've got the shell of it, haven't we, outlined so far. So I think the playbook is really, I suppose, what we want to try and do is translate government standards into something that's like a practical, consistent ways of working. I think there's a lot of like resources that we will have to use to kind of get it to meet all the guidance and standards. But I think the core ones are definitely like the functional standard, the Green Book, and the sourcing playbook. There's the project assurance framework and gateways. So I think, we'll put in the gates that are required and define, what these gates are, what's the exit criteria, what's the evidence, but use the kind of the individual gate guidance to build those. So, at least if you were trying to tailor this playbook, you're not building the gates from scratch. You're saying, look, here's the standard gates that you have to go through. But I could imagine that departments locally would be like, well, actually, we've got a bit of extra exit criteria, or we need specific evidence for our business that needs to be done at this gate. So, and that's part of the kind of localization. But, I don't think they, broadly, they still have to demonstrate compliance back to, the gate requirements. And then I think, the last two, we definitely need to use the continuous improvement assessment framework and be really clear on where you get to in terms of the playbook and the requirements set out there, and then the route map and the sort of individual sort of modules around that. I think they're the kind of key ones that kind of what good looks like and some of the checks and balances that you need to put in place. So I think the playbook needs to be aligned with that. So and I think that's it. I think it's really something that's practical, that teams can follow. I suppose leaders or SROs have an overview of the life cycle, the playbook. They can view where the team is at. They can see that what's been completed, what's been evidenced. And I think the other side of it is, when you get audited, and like if you get like an independent audit, or it's kind of like the internal audit function, rather than going, oh, well, look, you're going to have to trawl through SharePoint and, do loads of interviews and ask loads of questions. What I think the best outcome for us is, well, here's the project playbook, here's where they are, and here's all the evidence that meets and satisfies all the requirements. So the actual playbook helps, the independent audit or the internal audit process, and it just becomes transparent, rather than, you're nervously like, I don't know if they've done everything. I don't know if they've got all the evidence. If you're head of professional responsible for the capability, that's, you're gonna be nervous. You just want to take that pain away, I think, by using the playbook. And then, so obviously we're talking about playbooks for those that have never come across Method Grid before, or the playbook approach. I think what we're building is one platform that sort of connects knowledge, process, and delivery for teams. So you can see there the kind of playbook would be laid out with all the stages, all the gates, all the deliverables and activities or controls that the team need to meet. I think the one thing I'd say that differentiates our approach and our way of thinking is, like, I'm not a Monday or Asana. I'm not just a task list and a checkbox. What we're trying to do is to say, look, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to evidence to us, but this is how you do it. And it's, I'd say most organizations are really good at, well, the tick box, but what they're probably lacking is, well, okay, but how do you give teams enough confidence and guidance in the how they do it? And so that's where I think the kind of merge of knowledge and delivery within the playbook is useful. And then I think there is then, Luke, okay, there is going to be standard e-learning and training resources available, but rather than keep them hidden in an LMS that you kind of have to look at when you join, or when you have to kind of review it every year, it's, well, how do we make that learning resource available? So you're writing an outline business case or a strategic business case. Great, well, here's what we need you to do, here's the template, here's some guidance, but here's the training resource, or here's the e-learning that kind of is available for you at the point of need. And I think, whilst the playbook will obviously help teams get clarity in ways of working, I think there is an aspect to it that you have to give people confidence in how to do something. Otherwise, if the human doesn't feel confident in being able to do it, that's your first compliance challenge. So I think it is about making sure that the playbook builds confidence in people's their confidence in able to execute the task that you want them to do. And
I think just very briefly to add to that, at the point of need is such a key part of this. It's about delivering the right information as you're going through that process of delivery, so that at the right time in your delivery, you want to access the information. It's got all of the information that's required to understand this aspect of the project that you're delivering, your task list that's associated with it. And if you're kind of a new onboarder or just trying to upskill yourself in that process, you can also have that e-learning embedded within the element to upskill yourself and learn exactly what it is to know, and have the confidence that you've got all the right information to deliver that specific part.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of like stakeholders that we need to really kind of deliver value to. I think obviously we talked about a few of them. There's the leadership, like your SRO, the heads of profession. Like, okay, I'm now more confident that we have a like practical way of working that meets the standards. I think then to like the actual like profession within, like if you're a project manager or your team, then it's kind of, and there's different flavors. There's entry, like there's people on the career progression going through the capability like development framework. And obviously this would be a great asset for them, kind of how I do this. But then also to like the people that have been in departments and government for a long time, I don't have to repeat myself every time, I'm like pointing people to say, well, that's how you do it. I'm not getting bogged down by like, oh, how do we do this? How do we do that? I have a playbook and it's like, well, look, guys, we just need to follow this, so it's helping kind of the sort of dissemination of knowledge across the organization, really to help you be more confident, I suppose, in the capability and its resilience.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think some of the outcomes, I think obviously, we want to kind of get it to be a consistent life cycle. I think there'll always be departments that'll say, look, we don't call it that stage name and we want to call it that. So, there'll be tailoring. Definitely themes, stages are easy. Themes are a more emotive piece. So when we get to kind of think about, well, what are the themes of this playbook, then I think that'll be an area of conversation and yeah, look forward to that one. Obviously, we want to make sure that it aligns to government standards and be really clear on where it does that. But I think it's the playbook outcomes, can it help you get consistency in delivery? But also, that kind of clear operational guidance. It's not, it's not just a playbook that says this is what the functional standard says. It's how we've interpreted that functional standard and how we've operationalized it within our department, within our function. And that's really what we need to give people clarity on. I think the things we talked about, look, can we accelerate or at least help you on the journey to your, like the minimum standard of your capability maturity? And, ideally, Luke, when we finished it, where could we get you to? And I think, or, which requirements do we think we can get you to, and be really transparent with people on that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I think, yeah, better assurance and governance. I don't want it to be, if you follow this playbook and you have a playbook for every project and your teams are filling it in, you don't have to worry about, well, where is that project? Have they gone through this gate? Have they got, these deliverables in place? That's like, I want that, that's not a pain point we want people to have to worry about. It's like, I open up the playbook, team are using it, they're evidencing to it. That's it. It's completely transparent. We get audited, we get assured. There's the playbook. Ask us questions, and and just let that be transparent. And then I think you'll just call the other one out is, look, how do we get faster onboarding and learning? So, how quickly can we onboard new people to our way of working within the department, within the organization? And as part of it, maybe potentially, how can we make the playbook support the like the professional capability development of people, because it is a learning resource. It should help them on how they do things. And potentially there's things that we could look at in terms of integration with Camille and Ghost, to be able to, like, I've completed this on the playbook, therefore that's my evidence about, I've completed these deliverables, can I use that as evidence to support? So there's that aspect of the playbook as well. But I think I put terms as, look, the standard looks like, I think the playbook needs to show teams how you deliver that, but how you deliver that within the organization and within the department. And so I think that's the scope of this industry research project. I mean, if you don't know anything about us, we're Method Grid. It's it's a playbook platform, but obviously we specialize in people capability. So it's building you the training resources, video explainers, and then more recently, which I think we'll pilot on this project, Luke, it's the kind of smarter ways of working. So the AI quality assurance on project deliverables, it's template dynamics, helping you produce the deliverable using AI. So I think one area that I know we'll have to build, and we'll maybe do a focus session on it, can we get AI to help people write good business cases? So can it write a good outline business case? Can it quality check an outline business case and give instant feedback on whether it meets the requirements and the standards? But I think most importantly, for the AI one is, look, if we build a standard UK, or we take the UK project business case template, can AI ingest it, read it, and then work with the user to write the sections with prompts and support, not taking the human out of the loop, but trying to make sure that they get it right first time. And I think that would be a good session for us to focus on, like, how do we get more productivity, more efficiency, but helping teams get it right first time as part of that process as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why building that AI content library is so important, with the right information in there. So it's pulling out kind of all of that stuff that you previously mentioned from the Green Book, the Teal Book, government standards, etc. It's source grounded in all of that content when it's populating.
Yeah. If you want to know more information about Method Grid, I suppose the best white paper that kind of helps you understand the problem about ways of working is the Process to Playbook. That's the kind of guide to consistent ways of working. We'll put, when we post the podcast, we'll put this link with it so you can download the link to that. And I think what we're going to try and commit to do is we'll do an update each month. Some of it might just be, obviously this one's online, some of it might be in person, and it's just talking about the project. I think the next conversation we thought would be relevant is, okay, let's talk about the easy bit, stages. So the stages of the playbook will be pretty simple. I think there's a conversation about themes. So showing, what would be the themes, like the horizontal like things on the playbook that go left to right through all stages. I think that's probably us to demonstrate what we think they're called, what their role is, and what they're sourced and linked to, because there'll be what's in the standard, what's in the route map, what's in the capability framework, and making sure that we're clear on what the themes are. And I think the first one, Luke, as well, is can we get the gates built? So that at least, we've got a starter for 10 in terms of what evidence and gates, what evidence exit criteria is required for each of the standard gates using the project assurance framework. So I think that'll probably be an online session, because we'll probably have the playbook with a few supporting slides and sort of a look of the playbook as it's sort of taking shape. Obviously, look, if coming to the end of this session, I think if you are interested and want to get involved, please reach out to myself and Luke on LinkedIn. Either comment on us or just leave us a message on LinkedIn. We'd love to talk about the project. We'd love to get more insight about the problem, but also we'd like more people involved about the solution as the playbook develops. But I suppose what we're committed to is sort of sharing that story as we go along on the journey. Cool. I think that draws it to a conclusion. So appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. And we'll be back in April to give you an update on stages, themes, and gates for the playbook.